Hello, and welcome to episode 96 of Things I Learned from Barry Harris. And today I thought we would talk a little bit more and in depth about Barry's beautiful chromatic scale. I made a couple of videos about this previously, but just as a refresher, Barry in the 90s, I think about 1996 or so, my friend Axel kind of corrected me on it, but I think it's 96 or 97, came up with this chromatic scale, which was pretty, it's actually an easy concept. So if we take F7, let's say, to use for and it works with any scale, but let's take F7. The idea behind it is any place that you have a half step in between two notes, you use it. Any place where you don't have a half step between the two notes, you jump up to the next scale tone. So for instance, if we played F7 scale, or F mixolydian, F dominant scale, in between F and G, you have a half step, so you use it. F sharp G. In between G and A, you use it. You have G, G sharp A. In between A and B flat, you do not have a half step, so you jump from A to C, then hit B flat. So far we have F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, C. Now we jump back to B flat. Now in between B flat and C, we do have one. B flat, B, C. In between C and D, we have one. C, C sharp, D. In between D and E flat, we don't have a half step, so we have to jump up to F. So we got D, F, E flat, and then in between E flat and D and F, we have one. E flat, E, F. So our whole scale would be, and the same thing going down, descending. We're going to use the same half steps. So in between F and E flat, we have one, which is the E natural. Now in between E flat and D, we don't have a half step, so we're going to jump back up to F, and so on. So we're going to say, here's the scale going up, then down. Now that's the concept for Barry's chromatic scale, and you can use it for a major scale, you could use it for a minor scale. It's brilliant. It's another Barry Harris brilliant thing. So the way he had us practicing it was, for instance, you could practice it in thirds. So just like on an F7 scale, or any scale we're playing, we play in thirds. Well, in thirds, in the chromatic, we would have to say F to A. So it's going to be, then the next third would be G to B flat, and it would be, and so on. So you're going to say, sorry, last one. Now, if you could do it up a third, sometimes the next thing you do is a triad when you're practicing a normal F7 scale. So what you have to do is do the triad, which would be basically F, A, and C. So you're going to do that with the chromatic scale. The next one would be, which would be, next one. That's the triad. So, and these are brilliant, and you use them as part of your, just using them in combination with Barry's original descending half-step rules, in combination with pivots, in combination with half-step below thirds, half-step below triads, half-step below chords, and so on. And as you chain some of these things together, you can create really beautiful lines that are your own, as opposed to just copying Sonny Rollins or Charlie Parker or even Barry. Now, the thing that I was interested in for myself was, since I'm an extremely on-the-beat player, I've constantly noticed that about myself, that I always create things or lines that start on a beat as opposed to on the end. I started to think about, well, how can we use this scale, since this entire scale is predicated on the fact that we start on a beat. So for instance, if I put this on, I have it on about 140. So this would be the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Triads. 2, 3, 4. And so on. See? Or you could even do chords, which would be to this. So it would be 2, 3, 4. Next one. And so on. And so on. Again, it's predicated on the fact that we're starting on a beat. But then what starts to happen is you realize, well, wait a minute. Now, all of my lines and all my creations are always going to start on a beat, whether it's the first beat, second, third, or fourth. So I notice for myself in my own playing, when I see a transcription of Charlie Parker or a transcription of all the great players, you don't see that they start phrases on the same beat, on one or two. They start phrases anywhere. Same thing with Barry. I've seen people transcribe Barry, and they start phrases anywhere. So I just thought, well, this scale is not going to be good for that because it's predicated on starting on a beat. But I want to use this scale. So I said, what would be a good way to do it? And I realized if you start on an and, all you do is skip the very first half step. So let's say, for instance, instead of us doing a third from F to A using Barry's chromatic scale, and we say, that's on a beat. So this is what it would be. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now, a good rule is, if you start on an and, just skip the very first half step, whatever that is. So let's say I'm going to go from F to A. Now, if I start on an and, I'm going to skip the F sharp. So instead of playing this, I'm going to play this. So watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Next one. Next one. Next one. So each one of those examples, I skipped the very first half step. So the first example was this is normally it, but now I changed it to this because now I'm starting on the and. The next one, if I did a third from G to B flat, it would be normally. But since I'm starting on an and, instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the second one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is really pretty. Next one. 1, 2, 3. Normal would be. That's normal. But now it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So you skip the first half step, which would be between the third and the fifth. So when I started doing this, I realized, oh man, there's a million things to practice. A million things to practice. So let's say we're doing a song that starts on C minor. Like Perdido or Autumn Leaves or anything like that. So you could start from any degree. So let's do some descending stuff maybe. Let's say, so normally, if we started on the second, we would do. So let's say 1. So let's try it. That's normal. But so we started on 1, 2, 3, and we started on the third beat. So maybe let's start on the and of 2. So let's try that. So that was starting on the and of the 2. So instead of using the half steps going, which would be pretty easy, starting from second all the way down to flat 7, where you just go totally chromatic. Now I'm starting with just on the second, and I'm skipping the first half step between the second and the tonic. So now I'm saying, I mean, that's so pretty. That is some pretty stuff. Or if I started on the fifth, let's say, 1, 2, 3. That's starting on the beat, but now let's start on the and. So that time I just did one half step, but now maybe let's do starting on the 5 and skipping the first half step, but then when I get to the 4, I do the 4's half step, and between 4 and 3 you have to put the 5 again. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I mean, that is so pretty. 1, 2, 3. that is pretty stuff. 1, 2, 3. I mean, that stuff is so pretty. So these kind of little things to me are complete game changers for myself, at least. And perhaps it's going to be for you too, because I'm the type of person that the one of the weak things in my playing is the rhythm. One of the weak things, many weak things, but one of the weaknesses I have is rhythm. But I find if I really practice these in this fashion, it's really helpful, super helpful. And Barry's chromatic scale has always been one of the, I mean, of all the wonderful things he's come up with, it's one that I really enjoy practicing, and I can see it quickly, and I'm able to make up lines with it. But now that I'm able to see it for starting on an and it was such an easy solution to just don't do the first half step, just play at normal scale, and then continue with his half step, chromatic half step rules after that. It's perfect. But it's another instance where he just gives us these tools that we can use to really become fluent improvisers. It's a real blessing. Anyway, until next time, I hope you enjoy practicing Barry's beautiful chromatic scale. See you soon.